that sounds about right. That's actually one of the reasons I got into VR, right? Like my whole personal journey as a person who uses technology in this way, that my relationship with technology sort of culminates in that. I realized in the early days when I got my Oculus Rift DK2 and my Leap Motion that the common idea that this VR technology is for transporting you to a new place is very limited. I really don't like use case thinking. When
Mhm.
somebody shows me a new piece of technology, I almost never go, what's it for? I ask myself, what can it do? Right? Because if I look at the capabilities first, I can come up with my own use cases, and so can the end customers. Now, it's not common to think like this,
No,
but
not at all.
it's very empowering because then it gives you a lot of flexibility, right? You can do a lot more things with your life once you start looking at the things in your world in terms of what they let you do instead of like what they were quote unquote designed for. um
Are what you saying, just out of curiosity, is that more or less related to, if we set this up with that in mind, are we helping the end user get to that flow state of peak immersion almost a little easier?
um hmm. I think it depends on the individual user. Like that's such a there are so many contexts that question could be true in that I'm not really sure um where to go with that one.
That's fair.
But I
I
I,
was a
I
little
can bring
broad.
it. No worries. I mean, I can bring it back to kind of where we were going with this, though, was that I got my hands on an Oculus Rift DK2 and Elite Motion. And that combination at first lets you get photons into a user's eyes. And it lets, with the hand tracking, they can manipulate objects in the world. But the really cool thing about it is it has a stereo near infrared cameras on the front and an infrared emitter. You put it in pass-through mode, and all of a sudden you realize you have a primitive, cheap form of night vision. Really cheap. I paid $350 for that headset and $90 for the camera. There were actually times when I caught myself. So, like, sometimes I would be working late at night, and my wife would be asleep next to me on the bed. And I didn't want to wake her up, but I had to get out of my desk and like climb over all this weird crap in my room. So I put the headset on and I turned on the pass through mode, and now I have night vision because I have this VR technology.
That's
So
hilarious.
exactly. And so that's sort of the thing where, like, when you're talking about the stovetop, what I'm trying to get people to realize is that the more sensors you put on a body, what we're building with this VR and AR technology is they're not just gadgets for fun. They're not toys. They are sensory organs, right? Like they're new senses and mini brains that we can integrate into ourselves because that's how close they are to us.
Yeah. That's I wish more people would be thinking about it like that when it comes to educating them and getting them to buy into that view. I know, just like you brought up in the article, you have the intrinsic and extrinsic ways of maybe motivating them there. And I don't really want to get into the extrinsic because I think most people understand what those are. They're the incentives.
Yeah.
But how do developers or the people making this possible, where you just found a use case for it that maybe wasn't even designed, how do other people get to that same mindset intrinsically when you can't, as a developer, choose what that value is for them? Intrinsically, they need to have it themselves. You just have to provide the means for them to find it, I'm assuming.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, this is sort of like the same marketing problem we have with VR in general at this point. Um, and it has like sort of this, I'm sure you've heard the quote from The Matrix, no one can be told what the Matrix is, they have to see it for themselves.
Yes, yes.
Um, and so, like, one of the things I really want to see once the pandemic starts to wind down is people who really want to sell VR to the public. What they should do is they should do a massive boots on the ground advertising campaign, kind of like rollerblades did in the 90s, where you just go city to city and you get thousands of people at each place in a headset with the best experience you can get them. It's about showing people. You evangelize and you show people. You don't push them, right? Because you can't force people to live life the way you want to live it.
Absolutely
But
not.
if you put enough work into showing people what you mean, you will eventually find the people that have the interests that you do.
I can think of many reasons why that hasn't happened yet pre-COVID. Where VR was pre-COVID, Oculus Quest 1 and 2, which is probably the easiest way to do this, what you're saying, boots on the ground, wasn't even a thing. Before COVID, though, putting aside the hardware limitations, what's your opinion on why we weren't doing that to start with? Why, when the Quest 1 launched, which was pre-COVID, were the boots on the ground not really there at all? Was it just too soon?
So, far from me to speak for any
Sure.
other professionals in the industry, right? I don't want to go around saying what Facebook was thinking because I don't work there. I don't know them. I don't really even talk to them. Um, but I do think there are some reasons that are possible candidates. The big one is that it's been a long time since people have really marketed physical goods that way. Like you'll notice the campaign that I thought of occurred in the 1990s.
Hmm.
Um, Digital advertising is so much easier and more effective in many cases, especially if you're advertising a website or an app or whatever. It's very easy to do that digitally. So I think that a big one would be that that's just kind of not how marketing is done anymore. And then the other one is that it is a very logistics and effort intensive way of marketing things. There are
Hmm.
some things you can only market this way, and I think people are going to have to learn that VR might be one of those things. But yeah, it's a lot of work to do that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, just when I was going around trying to show people VR, just getting them to agree to speak with me about VR was a hassle. I didn't even give them a headset yet. Just, hey, give me 10 minutes of your time on a phone call. 8 minutes of it I'll be talking about you and learning about you, and 2 minutes of it I'll be asking you to see if you want to just try it. And even that was difficult enough, which is a shame because it is such an amazing opportunity to broaden the possible world that you live in, where eventually this might be all the world that you're living in. And it's a shame that people are so skeptical of it. And skeptical might be the wrong word. That is the wrong word. They're just, it's new, it's different, and it takes time to learn and want to be part of it. Um, but that was something I took a lot from your first article too. And one thing I always think about too, though, is there's a lot of friction points. You know, we use
Yep.
the word friction in VR.
Hmm.
Um, I think there's a lot of friction just in real life of time management. Everything is so fast paced. It's wham bam, thank you, ma'am, on to the next. How do we get people to slow down and enjoy what AR, XR, VR can do where it's not just gaming? How can we show them the value in the small things like being able for the data points you talk about, where natural world, being able to learn things that you wouldn't normally do with data points on the screen, but that's going to take people slowing down. You know, how do we get them to do
Yeah.
that?
Well, I mean, people do still take time off for themselves in their lives. We do live in a very hectic world. Um, but I mean, I still see an escalation of interests. Now I know I'm narrowing this back down into the VR scope, so it's not
Yeah.
necessarily what you're talking about. But so I'm out of the developer community. I am one of the people that I know of in my circle of friends that spends the most time in VR chat or in VR and specifically VR chat
Hmm.
as a user because a lot of them are too busy heads down trying to actually ship their game, which I mean, you got to do that if you want to survive. I'm very fortunate to be able to put aside a lot of my time to live in VR. But what I see is I see a lot like an escalation. Somebody will show up in VR chat while I'm hanging out, drinking with buddies, whatever. Somebody will join us and they're a desktop user, right? And just hanging out with us in VR as a desktop user, they can see if they watch long enough, they can see, right? We're moving our bodies, we're moving around, we make eye contact, blah blah blah. They're like, "Oh, that's a little bit more powerful than what I'm doing."
Hmm.
And then that person will come in, they'll be like, "Yo, I got my quest. It's awesome. It's awesome." And then great, awesome. And then they'll see that we're using full body tracking, right? And then they're like, "That looks really cool. I want to get full body tracking." And then half a year later, because it took them that long to save up, and people do save up, I will mention, um, then they're like, "Oh, I got full body tracking. It's awesome." And then we all sit down and we get sad and grumpy and complain that like eye tracking and lip tracking and everything isn't like um so for a lot of this stuff, it's really you can kind of do it incidentally. I think the big thing is getting somebody inside a headset and then in the first few conversations you have while you're there, you kind of like prime them for the idea that like this is a really deep rabbit hole that you can explore a lot and no pressure, but like, don't forget that there's a lot more here. I don't know. I just think like gently reminding people, being open about it, and not pushing them too hard
Yeah. It's
does
almost
most of it.
it almost sounds like what you're or not what you're advising, but what you're thinking, what I'm thinking from what you're saying is that it's not about getting people to buy in to the extremes, not about buying into the far future, about buying into what they have now that they're already interested in their normal life, but maybe this is the adjacent version. So it's no different than why I personally like Star Wars for VR. I don't think the games were particularly my thing, what I was looking for, but I appreciated being able to enjoy a property that I really have grown up with. And now, if I wasn't into VR, maybe that would push me over because I know what that is. I feel comfortable. It's safe and it's inviting. And now this thing that's a little scary that I don't really know much about, I can't try it before I buy it. Well, now I at least can be edged in with something I feel very comfortable with. And that's kind of what you alluded to with VR chat in a way. These people see you, they're already enjoying VR chat, and they're maybe enjoying your company. And then they see you wave and the fingers move and they're intrigued. And this is just another way they can enjoy what they already love a little bit of a deeper way. Hit that subscribe button to stay on top of the daily clips, or catch the debates and fireside chats live on the main channel down in the video description. See you next time, Space Cowboys.